I've wanted to share this story for a few months, and being that it's currently 4:30 in the morning and I can't sleep because I still have residual fear that someone is lurking in my apartment, I thought I would hop on here and share. To set the tone, I bartend and had an awful night at work. I have thicker skin and I can handle myself relatively well, but I had been sexually harassed by a man at the bar I worked at earlier that night. After he was kicked out from the establishment, I decided to stick it out. I even called my dad and talked with him, and we agreed that so long as I was physically safe and emotionally ready to finish my shift, I should. So I did. My boyfriend waited up for me in our shared ground level apartment, despite having worked a full day himself, because I was really upset about the comments made to me earlier in the night. To help visualize, we were lying in bed. Our bed is in the middle of the bedroom against the back wall, and we were lying with our heads where our feet normally were. The TV was no longer playing anything, but was still on the media screen. Hulu, Netflix, HBO, those types of options, but nothing playing. He had his hand on my back and had just fallen asleep. I could tell by his breathing. I was scrolling on my phone, finally allowing the discomfort of the night's earlier events to fade. Then I heard it, the faintest words, or word. Hello? I froze. I felt the milliseconds within the second expand. In a matter of moments, my eyes darted to the TV, to my boyfriend, and to my phone. And I thought, or more like desperately hoped, that I had experienced some type of auditory hallucination, that I was more tired than I realized. Then I heard it again, clear as day, coming from my hallway. Hello? But it was not loud. It was low and quiet, checking to see if I was asleep. All at once, I realized I could see a figure in my hallway. I realized the voice was coming from a person who did not belong in my home. I have not forgotten the feeling. The time of the break-in was 4 o'clock, and it's currently 4:44 a.m. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've fallen asleep before 4 a.m. since this incident, and or have woken up around 3 a.m. If I do fall asleep before 4, to make sure everything is locked, hence this post, I can't sleep. Anyways, I screamed with all of my heart. I screamed. My boyfriend jumped up, awake, confused and yelling. He threw open the bedroom door and there was the intruder, standing and staring in the darkness. We didn't know what he wanted, and we honestly still don't. My boyfriend pushed him and told him to leave. It was a Saturday night. We live a 25-minute walk from the bars, which may seem far but isn't as far as you think. We both assumed he had the wrong apartment, until he coldly, calmly said, "I'll leave," and turned around, not towards the front door, but towards the sliding glass patio door that has an enclosed patio. He slipped out so silently, so quickly, and hopped my 4-foot fencing. We decided to not call the police because I was hysterical, confused, and in the moment convinced myself all they had was the wrong apartment. It wasn't until we talked about the situation with more people there was something far more nefarious afoot. This happened 5 years ago when I, 20 female, was 15. My great aunt's health at the time was failing and she could no longer care for herself, so my family decided that she was better off at a nursing home due to her being an extreme hoarder. I don't want to shit on my family in any way, but this is important for the story. Her house sat abandoned. My father and I were the only ones that checked up on the house from time to time. It started off small when we noted minor stuff being moved around or drawers being looked through. Around that time, we didn't think much of it, since another person close to my great aunt also had a key to the house. We thought maybe he wanted to get some of his stuff, since he used to live with her for some time. After a while, probably a month later, things got stranger. We used to roam the house more to rescue some things in it and just look through everything. Maybe after a week of doing so and feeling watched every time we were there, more stuff would be moved around and misplaced, so we would notice it immediately. Like stuffed animals that used to sit on a shelf, now neatly sitting above one another on the staircase step by step. Dirty footprints and more drawers ripped open and the stuff inside spilled everywhere. We got very suspicious of the situation and investigated more. We had late night drives passing the house just to check if we ever caught a flashlight or any sign of someone being inside the house every night. At that time, I started telling my friends about the situation, and as the stupid kids we were back then, we thought it would be a good adventure for us to just stay there for a night and play security with the mission to finally catch this person that seemed almost like a ghost to us. Another piece of information that's important is that there was actually no way inside the house. No window open, all the doors locked, and we and this other guy were the only ones with the key. Anyways, back to the day we stayed there. I and 3 of my friends just settled into the kitchen, not noticing anything out of the ordinary yet, except for the normal stuff that had been going on. So we assumed that they weren't around yet. We ordered pizza and we just talked for a while, just waiting for something to happen. After a while, we decided that we would go for a walk with my 2 dogs that I had with me. I made sure to definitely close and lock the door behind me. When we returned after 15 minutes, a single lamp in the last corner of the living room was turned on. Keep in mind, the whole living room was filled with trash, so they had to climb over everything to just turn this lamp on. That's when we knew the person had to be in the house now. We decided to go into the kitchen and keep a low profile just to see what would happen. After a while, one of my friends, let's call her Jane, chickened out and wanted to go home, so we let her. Just 5 minutes after Jane closed the front door behind her, we heard someone walking down the wooden stairs, obviously thinking we all left the house. We were so caught up listening to the creaking of the steps that we only realized what was actually happening when one of my dogs started barking and the footsteps immediately stopped. There was only one wall separating us from whoever just came walking down the stairs. And when we finally realized that, we all got so scared and ran out of the house as fast as possible. There was a door separating the staircase from the hallway that we luckily locked as soon as we came back from the walk, so we probably locked them up there. When we finally all sat outside the house, we just decided that it's probably best if we just called the police and let them handle the situation. As we waited, basically all holding our breaths in the aftershock of the situation, we suddenly heard someone, a male voice, talking quietly, probably on the phone. That's when we noticed that a window was slightly open on the second story of the house. He must have opened it at one point because, like I said, no windows were ever open. We couldn't really make anything out that was being said, only something along the lines of, "Been caught." After 30 long minutes of sitting there, the police finally arrived and went inside. They looked through everything but found nothing. He for sure had enough time to simply hide somewhere. There was a room completely filled with cardboard boxes that reached under the roof. That's when things got extreme. It was like he was playing mind games with us. He left notes everywhere in the house for us to find, with weird drawn smiley faces and flowers saying, "Catch me." Placing this alarm thing underneath the front door that would go off anytime someone entered, letting him know that someone was there. Trashing the bedroom so it was beyond recognition, destroying furniture, shitting into the toilet, and placing a flower on top of the shit. And all of this without ever being caught once. Our checkups became more frequent, turning from once a day to every hour, but nothing. We eventually decided to let things cool down a little and ignored the problem for a while. At some point, he would surely leave a basically unlivable house, drowning in cat pee and trash, right? Nope, wrong. Probably 4 months after we didn't put much interest into him or the house, one of my friends saw some figures standing at the window behind the curtain, just staring outside. And we were just like, great, here we go again. And suddenly the interest was back. One day, we all decided to turn up at the house. There were 7 of us, and we were just ready to search that damn house from head to toe. Just finding the place that the guy was hiding at and where he was leaving and entering the house. Still, everything was locked. When we first got back inside, there was leftover and rotten food in the kitchen, and a surprise for us in the living room, where he shit on a cardboard box, just like a fucking dog. We decided to separate. 4 of us went inside the living area. One of my friends stayed outside, and a friend, let's call him Carl, and I went into the stable area of the house, because that part had a hole in the wall that connected the place the hay was kept to the attic, but we were never able to figure out exactly where that hole in the attic was. Carl was throwing little stones at the hole that seemed to be covered with something, like cardboard from the other side, just so our friends would be able to hear the sound from inside to find the entrance. All of a sudden, it knocked back. We actually saw the cardboard bending from someone hitting on it. And I yelled down to my friend outside if they were finally able to find that damn entrance. And all I got back from her was, "No, everyone is downstairs." Just kind of shocked, Carl and I quickly made our way out of the stable, and to the others, saying if we go to the attic now, we got him, since there would be no way he could escape that quickly, and he would have had to pass us on the stairs. We all ran upstairs, but again, nothing. Just nothing at all. After this, we just decided that we would give up and not go there again. We also realized that it might be too dangerous. He never seriously did anything to us, except for creeping us out, but we were wondering what he would do if we seriously caught him and stood in front of him. Our parents were also not really happy with us doing any of this, so again, months passed without anything. Only sometimes driving by and seeing a faint light inside, until the house was finally put back on the market to be sold. Today, it has been completely emptied out and is now being renovated. My family has houses both in Mexico and Texas, so I alternate between the USA and Mexico very frequently. On normal weeks, I just cross the border from Mexico to Texas to go to school, and then I come back to Mexico. I spend most of my time in Mexico, so naturally, I'm quite used to the cartel presence. I'm used to calling off nights out with friends due to cartel-related shootings and stuff like that. It just no longer surprises me. It wasn't until recently that I had an actual face-to-face encounter with the cartel. My ex-girlfriend lives in Mexico, in a gated neighborhood on the wealthier side of the city. Naturally, I used to frequent her house when we were still together. One night, her parents left her and her little brother alone until the next day, so she invited me over, and we got pretty hammered. Around 2 a.m., we went out for a walk because we wanted to smoke some weed. Weed from Texas. We sat at the bleachers of a basketball court within our neighborhood that was behind a very, very beautiful house, with expensive cars parked outside. I asked her, "What do they do?" To which she replied, "Cartel." I thought she was joking until she told me how the Mexican army had their whole neighborhood on lockdown because of them back in 2014. My smile faded pretty fast. I got kind of mad and worried, and I asked her, "What the fuck are we doing behind a cartel safe house at 2 a.m. smoking foreign weed?" This all happened quickly, and after 5 minutes of being there, a tall white pickup truck parked in front of the court. I immediately knew this wasn't good news and kept telling her we should leave. She told me to calm down, that it was probably just some kids making out in a truck. That seemed reasonable to me, but I started panicking after the truck just stayed there for like 5 minutes without turning off the engine, and as soon as we got up to leave, it took off. As we made our way to the other street, the huge weight that was lifted from my shoulders fell right back twice as heavy when the truck intercepted us at the very corner of the street. She ran into a house that was still in construction, and she tried to pull me with her, but I didn't budge because something I've learned from my dad, being a cop, is you never run if you have nothing to hide. She had the weed and I didn't, so I just stood there for a bit until the window of the driver's side went down, and a man signaled me to get closer, and I did. As I walked up, the first thing I saw was both of the men in there were armed, and this made my stomach drop. The passenger looked completely out of mind. Like, he genuinely looked unhinged. His pupils were fucking huge, and he was clearly tripping on something. On the other hand, the driver looked like a pretty normal guy. I dare to say he was so normal, it was comforting. He asked me. This whole conversation was in Spanish, of course. What we were doing. I said smoking, and he asked, "Smoking what?" I just said normal cigarettes. He turned to look at his partner and back at me, and there was a long pause before I said, "I don't know who you are looking for, but it's definitely not us. I'm not even from here." He asked me if I was American, to which I nodded, and then he said, "Show me." Fortunately, I always carry my passport with me since I cross the border so often. He asked me about my girlfriend. I said she was American too. She's not. And he told me to go get her. I told him that I'd rather not, because if they found weed on her that wasn't theirs, she would be fucked. Fortunately, the guy didn't insist, and after going through my phone, he told me he didn't want to see us out this late, behind that house ever again. They took off, and I turned back to her. She was peeking from behind a pile of cement bags. I signaled to her that we were leaving, and we ran back to the house. When we got to her front yard, I asked her to give me the weed so I could get rid of it, and she told me she hid it under the floorboards of the house. So we ran back to get it because if they found it there, we would still be fucked. The 2 minutes it took for us to run back to her house were easily the scariest moments of my life. What still makes my stomach turn to this day is the look the other guy had on his face. I'm telling you, he literally looked absolutely unhinged. He did not say a single thing, but he was staring me down the whole time, with his hand around the grip of his rifle. I felt like he was just itching for me to say the wrong thing, so he could blow my brains out right then and there.